And so if we move on to our final motion for this evening, it's motion 4 and it's regarding councillors' remote participation in council meetings, and it's being proposed by Councillor Jagger. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, first of all, I wish to address some rumours that have been circulating about me and say, yes, it is true. In the new year, I plan on going into labour. It's not that kind of labour, far too painful and messy. But just before I go into the details of this motion, first I want to say thank you to all the men and women in this council, both officers and members of different political parties, who have come to offer words of support, many of whom have encouraged me to bring the baby into the chamber once she's born. Just to clarify for those listening on the radio, if they do, I am pregnant. That's what I was talking about. I want to thank my fellow Liberal Democrats for electing me as their leader, knowing that I was expecting. And I want to thank this council for having a very progressive parental leave arrangement, as I believe I'm the first pregnant woman that will benefit from it. I'm happy to be corrected if that's not true. Finally, I want to thank former Deputy Council Leader Marjorie Bissett, who I'm told was instrumental in making that possible. However, our work is never done, and I wanted to speak to you today about the Local Government Act of 1972, which regulates much of what we do in this council. And as thrilled as I am of the possibility of bringing a baby into this chamber, as someone who has never been a parent, I have no clue how hard it will actually be. And I would much prefer to having the option of sometimes joining remotely so I can mute the meeting if I need to. However, despite much support from both in council and in parliament to allow this to happen, this council is currently banned from allowing remote participation, remote voting for councillors by a piece of legislation that is older than Google. You might be surprised to discover that I don't personally remember 1972, but I brought you a piece of 1972. This. Yeah. So for my students who might be watching this, this is called a floppy disk. And this is a 5.25 floppy disk. And this curious device had been considered cutting-edge technology in 1972. In fact, it was so cutting edge, they hadn't even been invented, because this one was not invented until 1979, not available until 1980, and the original one was about this big, and so old I couldn't even find one to bring today. But this amazing device holds between 110 kilobytes to 1.2 megabytes. To put it in modern context, it's about 6 ringtones. Recently, the High Court had to interpret the word attendance in the 1972 Act. The third branch of government, their role is to interpret the law in the context of its creation. It is not their job to create new laws or to ensure the law represents our current reality. Therefore, they concluded that attendance in 1972 meant face-to-face presence. So it falls to us, the elected members, to ensure that our laws are created for the world our children will recognize. The impact of this outdated legislation is significant. In a world where technology has allowed us to overcome obstacles as vast and as high as mountains and big as oceans, this 1972 interpretation unnecessarily restricts participation for those who have health issues, caregiving responsibilities, and other barriers to physical attendance. Many people simply choose not to run for office because they foresee these barriers and take themselves out of the context. And this has a detrimental impact on the diversity of our representation. Let me be clear, I am not advocating for the elimination of in-person meetings. The pandemic taught us that face-to-face contact is essential in some situations, but not all. What I'm calling for is flexibility for each local council to decide how to best to conduct their meetings. Westminster politicians from 1972, many of whom might not even be alive anymore, should not be dictating how we use technology in our council today, particularly when this is what they consider advanced technology. We did it during the pandemic. Our councils in Wales are currently doing it and have produced guidance that regulate online participation that might be appropriate. We've done it before. We have a regulatory blueprint to follow. I would also like to thank Daisy Cooper, Deputy Leader of the Liberal Democrats, who has raised this issue in government, and I am pleased to hear that there are a lot of support within Parliament for this legislation. The problem is Parliament is very busy, and unless we send a very clear message that this is important to us, this legislation will simply fall through the cracks. The Local Government Association, which represents councils, has warned that the recruitment and retention of councillors, especially those balancing career and care commitments, will be hindered if councils are not given the power to hold statutory meetings in a hybrid manner. The LGA recent research shows that 1 in 10 councils surveyed had a councillor step down since 2021 due to the requirement of in-person attendance at meetings. 84% of councils reported that councillors with work commitments would benefit from having hybrid meetings, and 64% said that the same with childcare responsibilities. This is about making the council more accessible, more inclusive, and more attuned to the realities of the 21st century. For this, over the summer, think of this. Over the summer, my husband, the bump, and I got into a taxi navigating the very busy streets in San Francisco. There were cars parked on both sides, cyclists, pedestrians, lots of traffic, and we did a 15-minute journey feeling perfectly safe, which is remarkable considering there was no human driver behind the wheel. It was a completely autonomous Jagger. The world is changing at an exponential speed, and AI is increasingly able to do more and more complex tasks. And yet, I am here today hoping that you will help me ask Parliament's permission to use technology that is now decades old. So, even if they change the law today, they will not be reflecting the world that she will face. So please think about this motion and the message that it sends about the relevance of our institutions in the modern world and the impact this outdated thinking has for democracy and inclusivity. Thank you very much.